I've made the bonkers decision to ride to the Moto GP next month, and this one, it's the Dutch GP, so it's not exactly local, so we're going to need some luggage to get the GSXR suitable for travelling. So as we mentioned, we're going to go and watch the Moto GP live, taking the trusty GSXR 600. Is it a good touring bike? Not really. The problem is, it's all I own is sports bikes, which is great. And we are planning to go to the Nürburgring following on from the Moto GP. I don't know how my body's going to cope with this mileage, but essentially, I don't really want a rucksack on for 4 or 5 days luggage. So our friends over at Ventura have sent out some goodies. So we've got a 40-litre luggage bag and a brace system that's all going to go on the bike as well, which hopefully, from what I've seen, also means we can quickly lift it off. So when I do go around the Nürburgring, I don't have to have that on the bike. But then obviously when we drive back to the UK, I can put my luggage on there. Everything's in there that I need. Now, my GSXR 600 K6 has got some slight changes in terms of it doesn't run the rear foot pegs, and it's got a different tail tidy, an aftermarket one. So it'd be interesting to see how this is going to work, because I believe it uses some of the original mounting points, but I can't see it being massively different. So let's get all this unboxed and then put the jigsaw on the ramp. So sit back, grab a cuppa. Comes with a nice little instruction manual. To be honest with you, this looks very straightforward. We're basically going to bolt this under the number plate bracket. These two are going to go, one down to the rear foot pegs, that's going to go onto there, that's going to clip on there, and then the bag goes on the back plate. So this really, famous last words, shouldn't take too long at all. But it's nice that it comes with all clear instructions, because nothing more frustrating than buying stuff that looks like a Connect kit and doesn't have any guidance on how to do it. But thankfully in this instance, it's pretty straightforward. So as we mentioned, it's a 40-litre bag. There's some instructions on there. It looks really straightforward, to be honest with you. There's literally, which we'll do a full tour of once it's done, but there's 2 clips on the back here. They undo and you just slide the whole bag onto the rail. And then obviously when you take it off, you've got your handle to carry your stuff around with. I mean, famous last words. That will hopefully be enough for the trip. But yeah, if you want model details, it's the Evo 40 Jetstream that we're going to be running. And as mentioned there, perfect for touring when you don't need to take the kitchen sink. So yeah, hopefully we won't need that, although I've been warned about the lack of showers. Not ideal for the princess in me, but yeah, really excited to get this on actually, because it's going to just be such a game changer that I can carry some stuff on the old trusty jigsaw. As you guys know from the previous videos, I always love working in the workshop. It just makes life so much easier. So we get the GSXR on the bench, get it up to a suitable height, and then I get it on the paddock stand. This is not something you have to do, but it certainly makes life easier than crawling around on the floor outside. The first step is removing the 2 10mm bolts that hold the number plate bracket in place, and on my case I've got an aftermarket tail tidier, so it might be slightly different on a factory bike, but I can't see it personally. Once that's been removed, you put the bolts to one side as you won't need these anymore, and you then need to make a small hole enlargement in the actual number plate holder itself, and as seen in the instructions it's about 10mm, and again I can't see this causing any long-term problems for putting the bike back to standard. Holes opened up to 10mm. This now allows the lower bracket to sit in place on the underside of the bike correctly. If you don't do this, unfortunately it's just not going to fit very well at all, so it has to be done so that you can use the kit. With them opened up, you can then use the supplied shorter and smaller bolts and washers and spring washers to hold the assembly in place, just using an Allen key to fasten these all up. With the two Allen keys now holding the lower bracket in place, I chose to use a torque wrench. Now unfortunately in the manual it doesn't state how tight these need to be, but from previous experience an M6 bolt usually will take 12 Nm quite comfortably, so following that torque setting is at your own risk, but for me I always like the satisfaction of making sure everything's nice and tight without going crazy and stripping threads. The installation manual does advise when fitting the L brackets to leave them slightly loose at this stage to help line everything up. But as I found out, it wasn't such an issue for me on this kit. Everything bolted straight together, took the correct torque setting and had no issues lining up the brackets. As I'm not running the pillion foot pegs, I've got these bolts and washers left over. I've used the pillion pegs once with my missus on the back, and I've got to be honest, a 600 was just not the bike for two up riding. But essentially what happens with this washer is if you've got the foot pegs, as you can see here, this would sit here and it would give you a level height, and then your foot peg would go over the top, hold the camera up there, and then this bolt and that bolt up there would go through. But obviously because I've only got the one bolt being used, because I've got no pillion pegs, that's done. So the short of four, one goes in there, the long one goes in the back. Again, I didn't have torque settings for these, but from past experience, this size thread, I've gone to 20 Nm, but do at your own risk if you follow the guide. The Evo rack can be fitted in a few ways. Looking at the instructions, it looks potentially like you can make it a little bit higher, and also they advise keeping it nice and low. The problem is I want to keep the seat hump on, so I do want it to come up and over this. I'm not going to have a lot of luggage in there, so I'm not too worried. But yeah, again, pretty straightforward instructions. Let's run through it now and get that fitted to the rack rail. The 4 bolts used to secure the cage or the bracket on the rear section of the bike I just do up pinch tight. As you'll see in this clip, essentially you need a little bit of movement to get them into position, as I assume this is a generic part for the kit that can be used on other bikes. Works really nicely, but once you've made sure it's all in the right position, you can then give it a little pinch up further and put it to one side, as you know roughly where your position is going to be when you torque everything up. And just like that, everything is fitted up. I've got to be honest, really lovely bit of kit to put together. And the only real permanent changes you've got to make is just slightly enlarging the holes into your number plate bracket. But you can still completely use the original bolts afterwards. So from what I can see, it's completely reversible. I think most people will probably have this fitted in about an hour, if that. I mean, it really doesn't. Now I've done it once, it wouldn't take long at all. But yeah, you've obviously got nice locking pins here that you can unscrew. And then once you've undone both sides, the whole rack can lift off. So you can take the bag and the plate off. So you're just left with the frame. I'm not too bothered about having the actual plate on the top because the bike's black, it all blends in. But obviously you've got these clips. Once these are undone, the bag just slides forward. I'll try and do that in one hand. And you can be away. You've got your handles on there. It's going to be mega for the trip. The only thing to advise, obviously, if you're like me, where you're running the pillion hump in the installation instructions, it doesn't show it with that. It shows it with the rear seat, which is even lower. So it's perfectly heighted. But I do want to keep the hump on there, which we can do. But I just might have to put some masking tape in case it rubs. Again, not a major issue. The only other thing you could do is on these brackets, you can actually rotate them round, which I had a quick look at, and you could bring the whole lot back, which would give the rider more room with a rucksack on. But you start moving all the weight towards the back of the bike, which is not a lot of weight really is going to be in there. I think it says like something like 5 kilos is your weight limit that you should have on there. So, but yeah, massive thanks to Ventura for sending this out. It's going to be perfect for the trip. It's exactly what I need. And like I say, it's not unsightly on there. Everything's really finished nicely, powder coated. You've got zinc plated bolts. Yeah, she will certainly do the job for the journey and give us some storage space, making a GSXR 600 a practical tourer. Before removing the bracket to torque everything up, I've put a straight line of marker pen, and this is purely so that I can see the location, because as I do torque these up, it does cause them to move slightly, so it's worth making sure that it's all in the position on the final torque setting. Now again, there's not an official torque number for this, but given the bolt size, I go with 20 Newton meters. Again, at your own risk if you choose to follow that tightness. Well, in typical fashion of how the year has started, the rain just continues to keep pouring. So, yep, being a sports bike rider, fair weather rider, fairy, whatever you want to call me, we're not going to get a road test in this part of the video. So, obviously, we're going to be going to the Moto GP very shortly. And what better place to give you a full review of the kit than when we actually cover potentially 1,500, 2,000 miles in 6 days. So yeah, hope you enjoyed the video. If so, make sure you hit that like button, consider subscribing, and again, we'll see you in the next one when we're heading to the Moto GP.